This controversy is the subject of our face-off debate now. Joining me, radio talk show host Joe Madison, WOL in Washington, Sirius XM radio. Radio talk show host Andrew Wilkow, also Sirius XM. Gentlemen, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Andrew, let me start with you. It sounds like the president, who I don't think anyone would argue, misspoke. Let's keep it as gentle as we can. Misspoke, but it sounds like he's trying to reconcile a mess to which he acknowledges today that he contributed to. That's a positive, isn't it?
Well, I'm kind of shocked that a guy with such great oratory skills, being a constitutional law professor, would claim guilty until proven innocent. I mean, I don't have all the facts, but the police acted stupidly. Come on, there's not enough minutia for the president to deal with that he had to step into this one.
Joe Madison, your thoughts? We're sitting here, the president today acknowledging, he said it sort of interestingly. He continues to believe that Professor Gates did not effectively behave well. I didn't hear him say that the first time, did you?
No, well, he didn't say it the first time. He clarified it, I think, in Cleveland. But I think your notes will show when I talked to your producer earlier today, even before the president went into the press room, that this is a learning moment. The president clearly blew it. Gates probably overreacted. I may have done the same if I had a cold and had gotten off a long flight from China. I think, for example, when I looked at the law in Massachusetts, the police really would not have had a case if they had not dropped the case on disorderly conduct, because according to a 76 decision, no matter how verbally abusive a person might be, you cannot find them guilty of disorderly conduct. So all the way around, 3 people made mistakes. And the one thing I do applaud the president is that he now has come forth and says, let's diffuse it. So the question is, where do we go as a people, as a country from here? And don't let this one incident, and I'll conclude with this, absolve the problem of racial profiling nationwide.
Yeah, you know, Joe's just gone to an issue that is difficult here because on its face, Andrew, is this racial profiling? And what debt do we owe the President of the United States for there being a very close national media examination of the events that happened in Cambridge, Massachusetts?
Wait, no, we hear the Democrats saying that the stimulus money is going to keep cops on the street during the election. They talked about cops this and cops that, and his immediate reaction is to throw the cops under the bus. To me, this sounds like a way of, boosting the stock of Race Baiting Incorporated. I mean, we elected the first black president. The NAACP is passing climate change resolutions. And, it seems like for some people, they're never going to get, as long as there is money and attention and votes invested in race baiting, the race baiting is going to continue. This seems to be the natural instinct of a community organizer that, well, it's got to be the cops. Got to be the cops. They acted stupidly. I don't know what really happened, but I know the cops are the bad guys here.
Well, I am one who has been profiled probably more times than you have, Andrew, and so has my son. And the point I'm making is that we're not baiting anybody. What we're asking is that we stop the profiling.
But wait a second. Come on, you're shouting.
Excuse me, I didn't interrupt you.
Okay,
and,
yes,
and I'm not. And with all due respect, and I'm not suggesting that this was profiling. What I am suggesting is that 2 grown men probably got over anxious and excited at each other, and neither could find a way to step back. And I think that's really what happened here, and I applaud the president for trying to diffuse it. And that's what we've got to do.
But why did he get involved in the first place? Why was the president of the United States involved in the first place?
Because he was, because he was asked a direct question, and I agree, and the president obviously went back the next day in the Oval Office and said, I didn't use the right words. But, you know, if he had been asked a question about Afghanistan or a question about something else, and if he didn't answer it directly, we would have criticized him for avoiding it.
Yeah,
so
but
you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Not on Afghanistan is not a question of innocent until proven guilty. He could have clearly said, you know, that's for the mayor of Cambridge to deal with, or the police chief of Cambridge to deal with. There was no reason for him to step into this. This has nothing to do with the President of the United States.
Well,
for him to forwardly admit that he doesn't know and then lay guilt at the feet of a police officer, to me, seems ridiculous for a constitutional law professor.
Look, Andrew, if that's the case, then neither the sergeant nor Professor Gates ought to accept an invitation to the White House.
Well, I mean...
Come on, man.
I don't understand how that follows, Joe.
Well, what I'm trying to say, if Andrew is saying he shouldn't get in it, then maybe the president should come back on and say, you know, I saw Andrew on Lou Dobbs' show, and he's right. I should ought to stay out of it. I'm sorry he invited him to the White House. What he's trying to do is diffuse a debate, and quite honestly, we know in part for political purposes so we can start talking about health care.
By the way, and I'm not sure he wants us talking about health care either, but maybe something else.
I'll talk about health care.
Well, let's stick with this if we may, because he talked about a teachable experience, which to me, frankly, sounds like an arrogant piece of condescension to all parties involved on the part of the White House. I understand they got to spin this out, but the teachable moment is here for a president who, you know, Andrew put it eloquently, he threw the police under the bus. It is a teachable moment for Professor Gates, who was arrogant and, frankly, aggressive with a police officer, and for Sergeant Crowley, who, teaching as he does racial profiling with a tremendous record, and as you articulated it, Joe, couldn't find a way out of this mess. Well, so those are the teachable moments for the nation. It seemed. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, the only reason I'm interrupting.
But by the way, you're interrupting me as you admonish Andrew not to do. Say you're sorry, Joe. Say you're sorry.
I'll go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say. However, we don't know, because when I interviewed Professor Gates, and I'll take him for his word, like you are taking the police officer for his word, Professor Gates told my audience that Sergeant Crowley was arrogant.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what started it.
By the way, you know, however you want to characterize Sergeant Crowley, what I didn't take one person's word over the other. But what I did listen to was telling us here on CNN that Sergeant Crowley was a rogue officer, which on its face is not borne out by the eyewitnesses there, including a black sergeant who was there at the house, nor a Hispanic officer who was there at the house at the same time. Well, but I want to say this, Andrew, I'm delighted to spend some time with you.
I had fun.
Joe, I am delighted to spend more time with you, even if you interrupt me. Thank you.
We share
don't interrupt
that
me. Don't interrupt me.
responsibility.
Okay. Joe Madison, Andrew Wilkow, thank you both for being here.